Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, 14th of March. A week away from the spring solstice. And we have 2.5 more weeks of the winter retreat. And so hopefully everybody who's either living here or able to plug in, tap into the routines here. Hopefully everybody's having enough time and interest, energy to be applying ourselves in a good way, in a fruitful, wholesome way. It's a great gift, these retreats, in my opinion. A gift of support. Of course, we get amazing support anyway, 365 days a year, but having a dedicated 3-month period of retreat, it's amazing. So, much gratitude to everyone who is supporting it, and also just to support us supporting each other in the community. Really feel very uplifted and energized by it. Myself, one of the things I like about the winter retreat is that I do get more space in my day, and I like to listen to Dhamma talks online. I really every day, virtually, pretty much every day I listen to a talk. And just to be able to have the Dhamma words floating around consciousness, and I usually, without choosing it intentionally, I usually land on some sort of theme that I start investigating. Something comes up, it snags me, like, oh, right. Especially something maybe that I realize I've got maybe not very good comprehension of understanding of an aspect of the Dhamma, and both intellectually and or just in how to apply it, how to apply some of the basic Dhamma that the Buddha shared, and it's been handed down to us. And then a couple of weeks ago, for those of us who might remember, I was reflecting on sort of habits and tendencies. I introduced, not to turn it into a Pali language class, but I introduced that, or was reflecting on that term anusaya, which is almost often translated as underlying tendencies. So I was reflecting on habits and how we create them. It's not like they were just zapped into us, boom. It's from some outer force or some other person. It's not like the Bluetooth transfer of files. If somebody just walks past you and transfers habits and tendencies into us. Of course not. But no, it's from past choices. Is maybe one of the easier ways that I've found in my ponderings. The language that seemed to make real sense was through past choices, and then I was reflecting that and so through new choices we can change habits and tendencies. So I may have made a mistake. I need to listen to my own talk from 2 weeks ago. I may have made a mistake, and said that the anusaya, the underlying tendencies that the Buddha was referring to, could be either wholesome or unwholesome. I need to check, and so, but because, in fact, in the Pali tradition of our scriptures, it's only referring to unwholesome. Okay, so I just want to clarify that, because to misstate the Dhamma and not clarify it if we can is not a good idea. Don't want to give now, but there are wholesome habits. So I just want to clarify that in terms of the original teachings. So I'm not just going to repeat the talk from 2 weeks. That's not my intention at all. One thing I've been reflecting on is that what comes up from time to time in reading Dhamma, other people's Dhamma talks, listening to them, and there's a sort of sometimes you'll hear the phrase when discussing meditation, bear attention, bear awareness, bear attention. And it's an interesting phrase, and it sounds good. I mean, to me, it sounds quite nice. Just dwell in bare attention, and to just be mindful of whatever comes, and then and then the other word, non-judgmental. Just whatever arises, just be mindful of it. And in fact, I think I've even offered within talks like this. I've even spoken in those terms. But these last few years, I've been reflecting on that. And the teachings, the way the Buddha presented them, there is effort. There is an effort in it, but it might not be the effort, because the word effort in English is that takes a lot of effort. Oh, there's a lot of effort involved in that. Okay, how much effort do you have to put in? Now, as meditators, as spiritual practitioners, is it the Buddha's effort? Yes, sometimes it takes a lot of effort, but sometimes it can be really refined and subtle. And so, although there is a passive, I feel there is a passive aspect, especially around like mindfulness, there of just being able to bear with what arises, what comes. But there is, if it's something that needs to change in our habitual ways of thinking and responding to sense impressions, then effort is wholesome. It's wholesome. It's useful. It's needed. If we're just going to bear attention and just the same patterns just keep repeating themselves over and over again, or if it's not just about meditation, if we're just responding to what happens in our days and nights. When we meet with some here again a sense impression, if we meet something through body, speech, or mind, if our responses are unwholesome, is to not just kind of say, well, okay, it's like this. Although I really like that phrase, it's like this, but are we just going to, or we might just say, well, this is just the way I am. This is just, this is the way I am, I don't mean anything by it, or we can sort of brush it away, or we can maybe get into this sort of spiritual bypassing. And so we do need to make changes, typically. Letting go of the unwholesome, cultivating the wholesome. And so this is where right effort. And so, for instance, this evening we chanted the Noble Eightfold Path, and within that is we chanted Samma Vayamo, right effort. And classically, there's the classical teaching on this, which is what I'm going to focus on this evening, because in its simplicity, it actually covers how to deal with the arisen things which are unwholesome, and how to bring into being and to enhance things that are wholesome. And so that we change those underlying tendencies of how we respond to different sense experiences. So that we're not just, we can just be with, unwholesome things coming and going, or wholesome things, because we grab at wholesome things. We can really suffer over wholesome things. If we pick up and grab wholesome thoughts, wholesome actions, if we grab them in the wrong way, and this is where the subtlety of the Dhamma, the subtlety of how suffering can arise is so interesting. It is not just around, I'll just do wholesome things, I'll just think wholesome things, but if we start to form an identity around that, or if we're critical of people that we feel are maybe doing something which is unwholesome or whatever, then, that's still suffering. So even though we might cultivate an amazingly wholesome lifestyle, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's the end of suffering. And so that's where I do feel that passive side of meditation, and maybe we want to call it bare attention, but that attention, if, depending on what lands in our attention, in our field of attention, that's where maybe, now it's appropriate to be proactive. So it's not just passive, but there is an activity, an effort being put forth to change those underlying tendencies. And so these things are tools, are aids and tools to then crack through to letting go of everything. So I don't know if everybody, probably not everybody, was at the reading the other day, but when Luang Por Chah, talking about, use in the English translation, abandoning unwholesome and even abandoning wholesome. We need to abandon happiness. We need to abandon unhappiness. Now, I'm not quite sure what word from the Thai is being translated into abandon, but it's the way I understand it and reflect on it is it's around that non-clinging, non-grasping. It's not throwing away. So to let go of something or to abandon something doesn't necessarily mean to throw something out. We need to cultivate wholesome, good, do good things, put in effort, really care, take care of things. But at the same time, we're not grasping at that as an action, but probably more importantly, we're not grasping it as the thing that sustains our well-being. It's good to do. It's good to let go and to cultivate the mind that's no longer hanging on to unwholesome or unwholesome things arising. Do all of that stuff. But here again, it's that can we then stay steady that when those unwholesome impulses do arise, there is this steadiness, this mindfulness. Attention. So like right mindfulness, even that's effort. It takes effort to be mindful. And so it's subtle. I'm not trying to make an argument that we should never never use develop bare awareness or use that term or anything like that. Not at all. I don't want to get involved in sort of these Dhamma debates or anything like that. I'm just offering this as a reflection, because where all of us here we meditate, and so I want to really encourage all of us to also be not content just with peaceful meditations. Now that might sound funny, because one of the things that we're encouraged to cultivate is contentment. So what am I saying? So yes, contentment, but where should we develop contentment? And here again, I'm just going to reflect on this. This is not from a book or anything, but yeah, so for instance, in the monastic community, a very strong emphasis on contentment with what's offered. Because everything that sustains us in the monastic community is freely offered. Everything. And if it wasn't physically offered, like somebody said, here's a clock, if for some reason we didn't have a clock, somebody offered money that could be used to buy a clock. Right, so everything here. Nothing has not come in through the generosity of human beings. So definitely we should, cultivate contentment, and through meditation to notice if there is discontent. Like one of the readings I did with Rinpoche, and he was just saying, he wasn't content here, he wasn't content. He's working with it. He had to transcend that. He had to work on that as a Dhamma theme and develop contentment. It can be developed. It's not either here or not here. But it's working with. So just to say again, so we really try to cultivate contentment around, especially around mundane worldly things. It's framed in our practice. It's framed around the 4 requisites. So that's food, lodging, medicine, and what's the third one? Sorry, I'm really tired. What's the 4th one? 4 requisites. Thank you. Yeah, clothing. Thank you. So we've got clothing. So whatever robes we receive, whatever food we receive, whatever medicine, and whatever lodging. So to develop that contentment, to notice if we're feeling discontent, and to reflect on that, not to beat ourselves up, not to make it, feel like we're a failure, but just, all right, this is the feeling of discontentment. So yes, develop contentment around those things. Now, when it comes to Dhamma practice, not that that's completely separate. It's not. It's part of it. But just to not be, for instance, content just with being peaceful meditation. So what are we going to do? Like that word I used, I think in the last talk I offered, that when the mind becomes wieldy. I guess it was during the guided meditation the other night. So when there is a settledness, a collectedness, so that word mindfulness is, so when things are kept in mind, to recollect, to be able to remember the theme of meditation, to be, okay, I'm with the breath, or I'm with the sound of silence, or I'm with the mantra Buddho, or whatever. So then once the mind is settled, the heart is settled, is then, all right, and yeah, we can rest in that. Maybe that's what we need. But also, then when the mind it's pliable, it's not shooting off here and there. Then, when something does arise, if say something comes up, we hear a sound, or we have a memory, or something, whatever, out of the 6 senses, is then the mind is pliable, and I really like that word, that wieldy. It's you can apply the mind to then reflect on that very thing that has arisen. It might be something wonderful, and then so just all right. So something that maybe that we can cultivate, maybe something within the Dhamma, within our practice, bring that, like a feeling of, if it's thoughts of loving kindness or compassion or whatever, we can actually sustain that, or we can direct that towards. We can maybe consciously think of other people and direct that. The mind is wieldy. It's not the monkey mind anymore. It's effort, right? If we feel we need to just rest in awareness, that can be very restful. Yeah, or the samadhi practices. That's those collected mind states, so settled. Very useful. And then the more settled we become, the more clearly we're or at least what usually happens then, more clearly we can see that when something does arise, it's more clear because the mind is less cluttered. Right? So if there's a road full of traffic, we don't know how many cars are there. But if it's a quiet afternoon, you're going to be able to go, oh, there's a car. There's a car in the distance. If there's a traffic jam, it's just hundreds of cars. You don't know how many are there. You don't know what they are. So when the mind goes quiet, when you just see that single thought or that single impulse come, okay, is it wholesome or unwholesome? Is there some work to be done? So that's when we get into this proactive. There's a proactivity and not just a passiveness. Also this idea of not judging. I reflected on this a little bit last year during one of the talks. We should be aware, my understanding, we need to be aware is what's arising, is it wholesome or unwholesome? If we're just kind of not discerning what's useful, what's wholesome, what's beneficial, what's to be cultivated and nourished, what's to be kind of watered, like a plant that we want to sustain. If we're just not in tune with that, then unwholesome, unhelpful, unwanted things, that we won't be breaking that pattern, that habitual pattern. Here again, these are patterns that we created, of course, through our environment, and it's not that we just made it all up, but through our own, I was reflecting earlier, as I was saying, choices about how we've responded to things in the past. It's probably something it's learned. We're conditioned beings. But we can change that. And by discerning, okay, is this wanted? Is it helpful? Is it wholesome? Is this to be cultivated or is this to be abandoned? Is this so by and sometimes a passive approach is good. Like maybe an unwholesome impulse arises, because just killing it and trying to repress it and suppress it, that doesn't work either. That doesn't work. That can really set up kind of an unwholesome habit. I feel if we're about to do something, that's harmful, sometimes that is the best thing to do, is to just really put a lid on it right there, then and there, but consciously. Like just boom, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Maybe that's the right thing to do. But here again, through mindfulness, through discernment, through experience. And that's why this gradual practice, to really, practice, it's a long road. But we can see benefits right away. So it's not that it's a long road before we see any benefit, but it's a long road, and just depending on our own conditioning and on where we're at in our life. So just as a reminder, of the four right efforts, because here again I feel that they're just such a great and simple model. So here, and I'll change the language slightly. So, a meditator awakens zeal for the non-arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome states. So, so it has that word zeal. There's energy. There's application. There's an interest, that to keep unarisen, to keep unwholesome things away from us. Maybe we know those trigger points. This is where meditation, we really get to know ourselves. We really, it's really like, that clear understanding of the way hopefully of the way our habit patterns and the things that push our buttons. And then when you just feel those first triggers, that's where this subtle mindfulness is as we develop over time. Maybe you're feeling those very first, you're noticing those very first triggers, and then by sustaining and increasing mindfulness, you're again not repressing or suppressing, but okay, all right, I just need to apply some more mindfulness in this area. Or if something, the other of those, and one of the right efforts, that if something has arisen already, like let's say there is a very unwholesome mind state, has come into being. Yeah, there are practices, so for instance, it's probably one of the most well-known ones, that, if we're feeling some sort of hatred or anger, is towards a person or people or a group of people or even a situation, we can consciously, here again, not just smother it, suppress it, repress it, but to to consciously soften around that. Or around a person, okay, that I'm feeling this towards that person, but can I wish them well? Do I have to like what they're doing, or do I have to like that person to wish them well as another living being? That's loving kindness. So it's not dismissing what we're feeling, but it's taking it and saying, well, is there something else that I can actually think about this person as well? So that's one of the more common ones. But or just abandoning, just to be able to feel something and then stop feeding it. Not feeding. So if we get into cyclical thinking, patterns of thinking, maybe we're sitting there, perfectly peaceful in the meditation hall, but we might be thinking of some situation that really pushed our buttons, and we might be just rumbling around, criticizing somebody or something, and feeling quite angry. And we can look really peaceful. They might look like, but if we had thought bubbles, but yeah, can we then just try and stop feeding that? Go back to the body. Go back to the breath. Thoughts come up again. Go back to the breath. So this is proactive. This is proactively working with what's arising in the mind. I'm just picking some random examples, obviously. But then on the positive side is so with wholesome things, is it to consciously, bring into being wholesome qualities into the mind and heart. So this is where, the meditations of the Brahma Viharas is such a, and there's obviously more than that, but the 4 Brahma Viharas of, like I was mentioning just now, loving kindness, but we have compassion, empathetic joy, and then equanimity. And to consciously cultivate that, cultivate things like joy, cultivate things, any wholesome heart state, mind state. And then the fourth, and I'm not doing these in order, but the fourth of the right efforts is that if a wholesome heart mind state is already there, is to nourish that, nurture that, and it's not that we just have to say, oh, it's arisen, and then not cultivate it. No, we can use that. here again, use those, especially if something has risen spontaneously, or if we've consciously, proactively brought it into being or increased it, we can use that. To here again, then the mind is, if we're mindful, that wieldy mind can direct that into aspects of our life, or to share that with other living beings. And so these right efforts, so there's this combination that is, of course, the Eightfold Path, which as we know, we recited tonight. They're all feeding each other. It's not just some sort of linear, like, oh, you do one and then it's discrete from the other. No, they're supporting each other. There's a sort of this holistic intermeshing of them. But there are some that are maybe more related to each other than others. And so this evening, what I'm probably, if I had to boil it down, really talking about mindfulness and right effort. Right mindfulness, right effort. So we're using our mindfulness, using our samadhi, using those practices of the collected mind, the mindful mind and heart, and then noticing and directing, and then applying these right efforts, and so that there is a combination of a more passivity of maybe just mindfulness, but then when whatever lands, then putting in effort, using our discerning, the discernment that we've developed, and directing that so that we can there is a wholesome effort to cultivate and to not be content in these cases, to not just be content with a peaceful mind, or be content with the mind and just letting things come and go. Because sometimes I've heard the phrase, I've heard this for the last 20 years, and I think we all have, but even in spiritual circles, it's all good. It's all good. Or it's the way it is. It is as it is. And sometimes the way I've felt, and I've even used it, is that it was a sort of dismissal. And here again, it's sort of almost like, here again, a spiritual bypass. Is that, well, it's just, that's the way it is, and sort of a sort of giving up, almost like a giving up, or this is just the way my mind works, or whatever. But we can change the way our minds work. We can change our habits. We can change the habits that we have, the habits of thought creation. We can change the way we respond internally and externally, and it all begins internally. We can do that. Suffering is a habit. Dukkha is a habit. And we can change that. The Buddha, I just don't believe for a minute, like he wouldn't teach something that human beings couldn't do. That's why he did it. That's why he shared it. He was a human being. He said, "You can do this." And so, he left behind, he shared all these teachings, and it's not that we need to know all of them and understand all of them and practice with each and every one of them, but really using these core teachings, like the Noble Eightfold Path. There's this, there's that lovely description in the suttas saying that, really, like the elephant's footprints, all teachings are really contained within the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths. So to take these teachings, these core teachings, try and reflect on them, consider them, apply them as much as we can according to our energy, probably enough for this evening. Just to encourage all of us to keep going. Okay, good. Now let us chant the Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world.